Hi everyone, welcome to the Car Chat podcast, and with me today I have Darren Turner. Hello.
Hi Sam, how are you?
Not bad, not bad. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about sort of who you are and what you do?
Darren Turner. I'm one of the works drivers at Aston Martin. I've been with the team since they started racing in 2005. And I've been a professional driver pretty much, I'd say, since 99 is when I've got my first paycheck. So that's whatever that is now. I can't even do the maths. So sort of 21 years, 22 years. And I'm now doing more and more with the road car stuff with Aston Martin as well. So as my racing career it gets towards the end, I'm sort of picking up the road car stuff. So pretty much every day is doing something with a car.
Something with a car, something cool. Can we...
Most days, yeah.
Other than having to talk to people like me occasionally. Can we sort of go back to the beginning-ish and then work through and sort of... How did you get into racing?
It was a little bit... a bit of a mistake. I wanted to race bikes, but my mum was like, there's no way you're going to race a motorbike. And so where they lived down in Camberley, Surrey, there was a kart track up at Blackbush Airport. So used to watch a little bit of that when we used to go to the market. So knew the kart track was there and everything else. But in actual fact, all I really wanted to be was like a Formula 1 mechanic. That was my goal. And I sort of didn't really understand that, the people in Formula 1 had basically, started out in the lower formulas, all started with karting or everything. I just looked at Senna, Mansell and these guys on TV and thought, they were born Grand Prix drivers and that was it. There wasn't anyone in the family that sort of knew anything about the sport. Yeah. So it took a bit of time to convince my parents that, I really want to do this. And they're like, okay, well, you need to save up and get yourself a go-kart. I think I probably started saving at 12 and got a go-kart at 13. And we just did it for fun at the local kart track. Me, dad, transit van, just rock up, do a bit of racing. And that was it. It was literally, I loved preparing the go-kart after school and at weekends, and maybe we did 10 races a year. It was quite clubby what we did, but the enjoyment was more working on the go-kart. When I was 14, near where my dad had his little unit, there was a Honda dealership that ran a couple of cars in the Honda CRX Championship, and they wanted a gopher. So I got a job after school and was working there like 2 or 3 nights a week, did the Saturdays, and then they started to take me away to some of the race weekends as the sort of gopher for the team. And so sort of 15, 16, I was sort of regularly going to race meetings around the UK and actually was like loving it because I was working on the cars. They trust me a little bit, not too much with Spanish, but it was an into motorsport. The karting was on the side and everything was going really well. And when I left school, they gave me a job. So my first part was working on this Honda dealership. So 1 minute I could be working on the little race cars, and the next bit I could be servicing a generator or a lawnmower or something like that, But unfortunately that dealership went under. And at sort of 16, I'm like, about to be made redundant. And I sent out my CV to pretty much every race team that I could find, because it was before the internet. So it was like, I think Yellow Pages, Autosport, whatever was around, just sent my CV out to everyone. And I got a couple of job interviews. I was just really lucky. Jordan Grand Prix was in its first year of Formula 1, and they were after someone to work in inspection. And because of the background I had with my dad's business, which was a little engineering shop, so I was used to measuring metal and materials and using a mill and a lathe and stuff like that. So I went up to Silverstone. I think I just turned 17, had this job interview at Jordan Grand Prix and got the job. And then suddenly it's like, well, I'm now working for a Formula 1 team. This is amazing. I never thought that was going to happen at this point, if at all. So, and it wasn't obviously working on the car as a race mechanic, but at least it was a foot in the door. I moved up to Silverstone. And
so what were you doing at that point?
In terms of racing or just...
No. Just like literally when you're working there as in doing inspection.
Yeah, inspection. So every item for the car was, if it came from a supplier. So it was such a small team. I think I was like the 43rd employee of Jordan Grand Prix at the time. So nearly everything was outsourced in terms of build, composite, machining, milling, everything like that. And so these bits would come in and you'd have to measure them, make sure they're correct to the drawing, make sure that the material was correct, and then it would be put into the stores and used on the race cars. So every day was like you could have, I don't know, 10 wishbones to measure, and they'd get put off to the race team, or it could be a gear lever. It could be, there's thousands of items on a Grand Prix car, even more so now. And it was like, just make sure everything is to the drawing, and that was my job. So, but it meant the good thing was I moved away from home, which meant as a 17-year-old, you have to grow up pretty quickly. And I was based at Silverstone, and in the middle of the heart of motor racing, which was ideal place to be. And we were still karting, so my dad would either he would drive to the kart track and I'd meet him, or he'd come and pick me up and we'd go somewhere and do a bit of karting. So it's all still club racing and a bit of fun. And then effectively I got more experience at Jordan Grand Prix, and then they let me sort of move around the company a little bit, and I did other bits. I moved into R&D, which was good because I started to work on the wind tunnel models and going to Southampton wind tunnel with the design team and Gary Anson and all these guys. So my learning of race cars was really, really steep, because I was in the sort of the high echelons of motorsport with all these, super smart people that I was able to sort of spend most days with. And I pretty much lived at Jordan Grand Prix. I didn't really have a social life. I just loved everything I was doing there. So that was amazing. And there was quite a few karting events run by the teams that were based at Silverstone. So I was a bit of a ringer, because I can't for real. I was only I would have been like 60 kilos or something like that. So I'd go to these kart races and sort of clean up. And then everyone sort of said, well, you should really give it a go. Try and go racing, move out of karts and try and do single seaters. And it's like, well, I've seen Formula Ford and I've got a rough idea that it's like 40 or 50 grand to go and do Formula Ford. That's something I'm never going to be able to get that sort of money together. And there used to be the Jim Russell Racing School at Donington. So I went around all the people at Jordan Grand Prix, and there was Alan Docking Racing. There was a number of little race teams based at Silverstone at the time. And, I was quite a cheeky little 17, 18-year-old. And I convinced everyone to give me a £5 or a tenner or 20, 30 quid. And eventually I got the £1,000 to go and do the Jim Russell Racing School. And that was really the start. That's when actually it started to take some sort of shape of being a racing driver. Up until then, it was just a bit of fun for me and my dad with the karting that gave me some access to understanding what race cars were about. So the Jim Russell, that week at Jim Russell was a real turning point in terms of trying to be a driver.
Yeah. That stage there of working on the cars and working in some way on seeing them, how they're designed and stuff, that must have helped you massively throughout. Because I presume there's a lot of drivers that haven't really got much of a clue of how a car goes together and how it all works.
Yeah, I think that is true. And it did give me a good grounding of vehicle dynamics and how things are put together, why they're put together. And also, especially when I've ended up in sports cars, it's like there's been a number of occasions when things go wrong and you're on the track, and having some knowledge to try and fix the car to get it back is really helpful. And so, that sort of, it wasn't an official engineering background. It was like a hands-on experience that I gained from sort of being with the race teams and obviously everything I did at Jordan Grand Prix. So, really helpful to sort of give me a good basis. And also, it was one of those things that at no point have I ever thought, I'm going to have a professional racing career.
Yeah.
That sort of came along later, and there wasn't like a plan to be there. So at least I had some sort of fallback plan. I could go back to working on the cars, and I still, I've had a couple of race cars myself that I've run myself just for fun, and I like tinkering. Even now I like to just tinker with stuff and work out how to put something together, how it will work, how to make it, improve it, redesign it, and all that sort of just playing around with bits of race cars. It's still fun now, but at least now it's a hobby rather than as a job.
So you're still working for the F1 team, and then you go to this race school. You do okay? Yeah,
it was really good. The Jim Russell School at the time, I don't think there's anything really like it now, but at the time it was like the best place to go. And it was a week-long course on the single-seaters, and they were using Vauxhall Juniors at the time. And like day one is generally tuition in terms of classroom tuition of what we're trying to achieve. And then they had at the Donington, the Grand Prix loop, so you could go up and down that. So you had to learn a heel and toe. And you weren't allowed off the loop onto the actual racetrack until you've mastered heel and toe, which was, when you think now that hardly any cars require it in terms of modern race cars, but at the time it was such a good grounding to have. And then the rest of the week was spent, getting up to speed, a bit more classroom sort of theory on it all, being driver coached by some really good guys that were sort of working at the school. And at the end of the week, it was a race. You got your first sort of signature knobs crossed on the back of the car. And I did well. I won that little race. And there was, a fair few competitive people in there. But it meant I came away thinking, oh, actually, I can do this. Yeah. I don't know how to do it in terms of financially, but I've got the skill sets to actually do the racing. And so that was the sort of start of a crazy journey through lower single-seaters and wheeling and dealing to try and find the money to sort of go forward. And the people at Jordan Grand Prix were very good. The next step was trying to work out, what is achievable in terms of a budget. There was no way I was going to walk into one, like, I guess the best team at the time was, or the best team for the first year of racing would have been Van Diemen with the Duckham's sponsored Formula Ford. That would have been a dream first gig. And the only thing that looked like we could afford to do was the Formula First Championship, which I have to say is probably one of the ugliest race cars ever built, but so much fun. And a really competitive field of drivers. There were teams in it. Probably the top sort of 6 or 7 cars were run by teams, but there was a lot of, van and trailer type racing that is exactly what I was going to do. So to get the money together, one of the designers at Jordan Grand Prix, I'd been quite friendly with him over a few years, and convinced him that I've got a business plan that if he lent me the money to buy this race car, I could buy it, I could race it, and then I would sell it for more money than I bought it for, and he would earn a profit. So he lent me the money to buy the first Formula First, and we went off and bought what we could for that money, and it was a bit of a nail. But the nice thing is I had the whole of Jordan Grand Prix and all of the facilities of Jordan Grand Prix. So I used to store my car there. When the team went off to the race weekends, I'd bring it out of the shed and I'd bring it round, and it would sit in the race bays that the F1 cars were in. And I spent every evening and every weekend just working on my race car, and slowly improved it. I was sort of fairly sort of cunning in working out that actually I need setups from the good teams. So I need to know some of the mechanics, and then hopefully they'll do a cash deal and come and do my car and set it up. So I sort of worked every angle I could, and we ended up doing 8 races of the championship. And the last race of the year, we put it on pole position, which sort of wasn't really known for, a lad and dad to sort of do. So it finished really well, and that gave me the chance to do a winter series with the team. They gave me a free drive. Speed Sport gave me a free drive, and away we went. And that was the start of this sort of semi becoming a racing driver. But again, it was finding the money. And what was really good on that Jim Russel racing squad, there was 3 other guys there that were doing the course. They were all there for different reasons. They were older than me, like 10 years older than me, something like that. So they're there just to enjoy the course. I'm still friends with them now. One of them worked in the city, and he was instrumental in finding me sponsors, like throughout the early stages. Nice. So those friendships and the desire to help me on my journey came from going to that Jim Russell school. And if I hadn't have gone to that school and hadn't met those guys who were, liked me and wanted to see me do well, then, my little racing career would have been really, really short, and it would have just been doing a bit of karting for fun or something like that. So, the chance to get to Jordan Grand Prix, the chance to go and do the Jim Russell Racing School, those key points were sort of the start of a career, really.
Yeah, because presumably there's tons of people out there who are quick, but putting together sponsorship to go and race, that's hard.
Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, there is hundreds of people thousands of people that are quick, and then there's the ones who are really quick, and then there's the ones who are exceptional. And there's not that many in that little bracket. But definitely for me, it was more about what was happening off the track, because the only way I could be on track was to make sure I optimised every opportunity off track, which was going out and finding money and sponsorship. So one of the other guys I met on the course, so I had the guy who was in the city finding money. Another guy, Andy, he was a printer, so he was helping me put brochures together, sponsorship proposals, all of this stuff that as a 18, 19-year-old at the time, I wouldn't have been able to do.
Yeah.
But he was there behind me doing it all and making sure I had professional brochures to be able to go and drop round, train estates and pop them through the door. Because again, it was all pre-internet. You literally had to get the yellow pages out and go, right, I'm going to go round this trading estate, and if I see one nice car outside of a building, then there must be a petrol head in there, and that's the company I'm going to put the brochure through. And it worked. You found little deals here, there, and everywhere. One of the guys that became a sponsor, like in '98, same deal. I was still out there sort of hustling and trying to find sponsorship like that. He's still a sponsor now. He's been on the journey for 22 years now. And, it's great that people, it's probably even harder now, especially with the current climate, to find people with companies that they can get involved and become part of your, whatever the journey is, especially the next sort of generation of drivers. So I was lucky that it was a period when there were a lot of companies that were probably in that position that they could do some sort of sponsorship deal and get involved.
And presumably, if you get the right person at the right time, that relationship, your relationship with them grows over the next 20 years or whatever. But then hopefully their company also grows over the next 20 years, or what they're doing business wise, and therefore they can offer more sponsorship.
One of the bit that like took me a few years to work out is when you're starting as a driver, there'll be a lad who's being a mechanic or trying to be a race engineer, or there's a guy in the company that you're getting sponsorship from who's also starting out. There's all these people starting out and on their journey and trying to move up. And now I'm really aware of it, and I try to sort of help, when I do speak to younger drivers about a bit of career advice, is just remember the guy that is your front end mechanic on your car, he's probably going to end up being a team manager, or he's going to be a race engineer, and he's going to be in the position in future years that could give you a job. So like, don't be a dick, basically. Because there's loads of people who are on a similar trajectory to you and trying to carve their own little career out, and they could be really influential in your career later on in life. And it might not be him that gives you the job, but someone will speak to him and say, was that Darren, what was he like to work with? And you want it to be positive, and you want it to be, get him in the car, he does a great job, really good team player. 100%. It's all about those relationships, and sometimes you'll meet someone and it'll be 10 years time before you see them again. But if you've made a positive impression on them, that they might be in that situation where they could be a sponsor, they could be a team boss, they could be anything that can further your career. So it's always best to remember just to be a nice person, basically, but to remember that you are on your journey, but everyone else is in the same boat, but in a different direction. But your paths could easily cross later.
That's so true. I'd never really thought of it like that, but 100%. All of those people that are just starting out and you come across and whatever, they are going somewhere.
And they could be a big dog in the future, and they could be the person that gives you the big contract for whatever you're trying to do. And even now, I'm sort of more aware of it as I'm getting to the end of like a racing career, that there's guys that were young, let's say when I was like early 30s, and they were like just coming into 20s, and they were like a number 3 mechanic. They're now proper players in maybe engineer or a team manager role at a team. And it's like, it's weird because I'm like a lot older. When I started, I was always younger than mechanics. Now I'm a lot older, and it's like, they're influential in making decisions, and you should be mindful of that whenever you're doing any part of a team sport, and I think just in life,
anything in life. It's definitely a good one to remember, isn't it? And check yourself every now and then when you might be rude to someone, like, no, don't go back and say sorry. Just be nicer.
It's better to be nice in the first place.
Exactly. So where do we go from there? So you've
so I did the Formula First Winter Championship with a team. I started to pick up a few bigger sponsors, and at that point, I made a few. Like everyone, you make career choices, and some of them are bad. And what I should have done after Formula First, I should have done Vauxhall Junior, but I got persuaded to do Vauxhall Lotus, which was just, I was still really inexperienced, and I sort of went 2 stages up the ladder. And it wasn't a great move. And that was a bit of so this was 94, a bit of a wasted year. But I had started to build up a bit of a sponsorship portfolio. And then that meant I went on to do Formula Renault in 95 and 96, which with Redgrave Racing, and that team in particular, that family looked after me so well. Without that family sort of taking me under their wing, 100% mine, probably by the end of 94, it would have, again, it would have been like that's done and dusted and really hard to keep anything going. But I was really lucky that the team, the family sort of believed in what I could do. And although I had a healthy sponsorship deal in 95 to bring to the team, in 96 I didn't, and the team funded my racing.
Oh, nice.
And it was that year that put me in the contention for the at the time it was the Autosport BRDC Award, McLaren Autosport BRDC Award. And it put me in contention to do that at the end of the year. And that award was basically the big stepping stone for sort of carving out a professional career. So you get to go to Silverstone, you have 2 days, and it was 6 drivers against each other, 6 young drivers, 2 days against each other in different things. Formula 3, I think we had a catering, we had a saloon car, and you're basically going out there to be the quickest in everything they give you, just be the quickest. And funny enough, this morning I've just come from Silverstone because the latest winner, or last year's winner, Jonathan Holgard, had his first run in the Formula 1 car. So it's really nice to be back involved in that as a judge and to see the next crop of drivers coming through. But the 2 days of the award, I just loved. I had 2 great days driving different cars, and I was able to just be myself and drive with everything on the line because there was so much at stake. But I went along to the awards ceremony in December thinking I did a good job, but no Formula Renault driver has actually won this award before. It's always a Vauxhall driver that's won it. So I'm guessing Vauxhall sort of sponsor the award or something like that. That's how my mind was working, that, there's no way that a Renault driver is going to win it. So I'll go along to the amazing Autosport Awards, have a lovely dinner with my family and friends, and sit at the end of the night and clap the winner and everything else. But to my amazement and everyone on my table, I picked up the award. And incredible moment in terms of, I don't actually remember much of the evening because it was all a little bit overwhelming. But to walk away with the title, the 50 grand check and membership to the BRDC, it was like a huge turning point and springboard for me. But what it did was give me the relationship with McLaren. So that was December 96. March 97, I got my first F1 test, which was part of the prize with the award at Silverstone. That went really well. And that's the start of my relationship from sort of 97 to 2006 with McLaren. And Martin Whitmarsh took me under his wing. And, he was the guy that got me into Mercedes DTM in 2000. And I spent 99 going around the world with the McLaren 2-seater Grand Prix car. Amazing time. And it all came from that award. And maybe if I hadn't won that award, it would have been the natural point of my racing finishing again, because trying to find the budget and everything else to move up to the next level would have been too difficult. But, again, even then there's been no plans. It was always what opportunities come along and then make the most of it. And, McLaren gave me loads of opportunities. They gave me the chance to be with Mercedes for a couple of years. And, that was the period that, 99 was when I started earning some money from driving race cars and sort of turning professional. So, very, very grateful to have picked up that award, because if I look back, everything pretty much goes back to that award and coming away as the winner.
Yeah, very cool. So at that time, you went from, did you say you Formula Ford into testing F1? Was that
Formula Renault? So I did. So
Formula Renault.
I came second in 96. Came second in the Formula Renault Championship, and then generally everyone who'd won the award had to wait a year or so before they got their F1 test. So I was like, okay, no worries. I'll just use the winner and I'll do what I can to raise the budget to try and move up to Formula 3 and make all that happen. And then there was a phone call saying, "Oh, you're going to test in March." Christ, I'm not even starting the Formula 3 season yet. And so it was a big jumping from a Formula Renault, which probably had 170 horsepower, to I'm guessing the Grand Prix cars then had 700 or something horsepower. So
what was that like?
It was huge, and it was a West livery McLaren. It looked amazing.
Sick.
Just the most amazing day. And when I left the circuit earlier, and Jonathan had completed his first installation lap, you can tell that the experience of driving the Grand Prix car for the first time, how overwhelming it is in a positive way. It's just all your senses are on fire because the things are just so fast. And he had damp conditions this morning. It's cold, it's damp. So that would have been even more exciting for him. And I had a perfectly blue sky, perfect day. And I can just remember heading down to Stowe for the first time thinking, Jesus, this thing's, it's not slowing down. It's still pushing and pushing and pushing. And it's one of those things that your eyes are watering and you can see them when you brake sort of dropping onto the front of your visor and stuff like that. And it's so true that the brakes on the Grand Prix car they're just insane. And that was on the installation lap. And I had another. They did it in 5 laps, knowing that we weren't really physically strong enough for it. So we had 4 5-lap runs. And by the time I got to the last 5 laps, I only did 3. And then I came in, and it was like, you've sort of come in a bit early, and I'm like, my neck's gone. I can't even hold my head up. So there's no point. If I continue for the next 2 laps, I'm going to go slower and probably crash. Yeah. So it was the right choice. And also, I think making that sensible choice on the day was the reason they then rang and said, okay, there's some more work to be had here if you want the future. And that's, the first thing they ask you to do is a aero test, which is up and down a runway. And, it's the real mundane stuff that the likes of Coulthard or Hakkinen really don't need to be involved with. Yeah. But for a young driver, it's great, to spend 3 days in the airfield in the middle of France, going up and down. It's just good experience. It builds that relationship with the test team, and then you get a chance to go for a proper track test, and all of those aspects all sort of come from doing a good day when hopefully this afternoon it's dried out at Silverstone and Jonathan's getting some decent running, and if he does a good job and shows that he's got the skill sets to sort of work at that level, then there may be some more opportunities for him in a Grand Prix car as the year goes on. It's a lot different now because there's less testing. There was so much testing when I was around in that period, and now there's hardly anything. And aero mapping and shakedown tests, they don't happen anymore. It's literally the cars get shipped to one race to the next, and they know they're going to work. They have complete faith. Where back then it was like, well, we better go and do 50 kilometres on the car just to make sure that we've got it all piped together correctly.
Yeah, because then I guess, and you've come through that era of going out, driving the car up and down a runway or whatever, working on bits, to now fully simulator testing. Yeah.
And it's the complete opposite now. Everything they can do, pretty much, I'd say nearly all the testing they can do in the sim is so accurate now that real-time testing is still really relevant. You can never get away from it, but it will either tell them that the numbers that they're getting from the sim is correct or not, and then someone in the simulation department has to go and do some more work. But it's to validate the numbers that they're getting through the sim testing, and obviously drivers, you want to be in a car and you want to go testing. But definitely now it's probably, I don't know, maybe it's only 10-15% of the testing that was done back when I was lucky enough to be in that period at McLaren then.
And are you testing in simulators now?
So I got my own sim company. So we, something that developed when I was at McLaren. So I just happened to be at McLaren as one of the younger drivers when Martin Whitmarsh decided to do a simulator program. At the time, no one had. There was offline simulation already going on, but there was no driver in the loop simulators.
Okay, yeah.
And he was the guy that basically instigated that program at McLaren. And they were the first team to really do it. I happened to be the young test driver on the books. And when you think about what we had at the start, which was, there was 2 engineers in charge of the program, a small room with a chassis in it, with a single projector screen. And the first 2 or 3 years were all done in that room. And it was a disaster to begin with. The tyre models, the car models, the vehicle model, all of it was in its infancy. And I could have a day there where literally I'd do a lap and the thing would crash and we couldn't run. And it was, impossible days while they worked out all the software required. And as the years and time went on, suddenly there was more data being generated from the sim that had some real relevance to the numbers that were coming from the circuit.
Yeah.
And then there was a bit of a crossover point where we started to generate some very accurate information. And that's when it got the budget to sort of really go. And I think at that point, the Formula One drums were beating and people were moving around teams saying, oh yeah, McLaren's made some real progress with their sim. And now you can see that every race team, every Formula One team's got a sim now. So I was lucky, I started doing that. I think it was either the back end of 98 or beginning of 99. And even up until this year, I've been doing the real high-end simulator work, either in Formula One or other big sort of like NASCAR and stuff like that. So those sort of programs where it's got the OEMs behind it. And so that stuff's been really good. And because of all that experience I got from doing the McLaren simulator and then Red Bull, then Toyota, I started to set up my little business based on simulators, more because there was an opportunity, because no one really was doing it at the other end of the market for driver sort of development at the time, and the technology was sort of just becoming available. And I was thinking, well, I'm probably not going to earn a living racing cars forever, so I need to have some other mechanism to earn, to pay my mortgage. Whether the little company survives or grows or does anything, I still need to learn. So thankfully, it's now been running 10 years and, it's growing and growing and growing, and we're sort of developing more products. But in terms of a learning curve, it's been really nice to have that going on simultaneously to my racing, because if I'd literally had to move across from racing to this 10 years ago, then I would have had to rely solely on earning out of this company. And, it's been able to grow organically while I've still been able to sort of go racing. And
how, so your company, where does that sit in terms of, you've got your F1 professional sims, I'm presuming is sort of like over here somewhere, and then you've got someone on their PlayStation over here. Where do you tailor towards and for who?
Yeah, so like the F1 sims aren't really there for driver training. They're literally there as an engineering tool to help with future designs or sort of development of the current car and optimization of it, especially over race weekends as well. That seems to be more of a common occurrence now, with all the teams doing simulation programs over race weekends during the sessions. So that their purpose is very clear. It's an engineering tool. The drivers will use it if they're learning new circuits or there's new sort of procedures that they need to understand. Technical regs may have changed. You might get the drivers to go and use the thing, but generally it's sim drivers in there in terms of test drivers or drivers who moved up the single seater rank but have ended up being in that role where they can earn a living, and they probably do 50, 60 days a year of sim driving. So that's the far end of the sort of simulated spectrum. Then you've got the other end, which is pure gaming, the PlayStations. Then you've got a little bit further this way is eSports, using more expensive equipment. And then we're sort of not an engineering sim in any shape or form, but we're a high-end driver development sim. So we're if you put PlayStation at 0 and F1 at 10, I would say we're sort of the 3 to 4 market. The bit that's difficult is the sort of the range 5, 6, 7, because at that point people are looking for engineering level detail from the sims, but that costs a lot of money and you need a lot of resources to it. And so there isn't really a marketplace for it that is would make you a viable business. There's a few people doing it, but it's really more of an internal race team type situation. Race team sets up their sim and then tries to use it for engineering purposes. Where we're, as this little facility, we've got 2 sims here. One's a single seater, one's a GT, and we're here to try and improve drivers over race weekends effectively. And there's a rate of money that people will pay for that service per hour. And if you try to push it up by spending more money on the sims and development, you wouldn't get your investment back. So there's this sort of sweet spot that quite a few companies are in, and it works really well. There's lots of customers. There's people that use it effectively to prepare for the next race weekend, and it's a service that I think is invaluable to any driver. Whether you're a pro or just coming into motor racing, it's such a cost-effective way of getting the practice in before going racing.
And how close are sims now, let's say at the level that you're setting them up, to a real car, like in terms of the feelings and what it's like obviously it's a sim, so it's different, but
yeah, it is. I mean, you're never going to replicate reality. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And what you can do is really screw it up and like throw loads of gizmos at it to try and do it. And then you end up with reverse cues that like make you feel like you're accelerating when you're meant to be decelerating. And, there's lots of things that people will put in, and it's subjective from driver to driver as well. The F1 teams are, their rate of development is still hugely impressive, but ultimately it comes down to there's a few fundamentals that you've got to get right. What the steering feels like, the visuals are like, and then also immersion from the cockpit or the sound or anything else. You get those core things right, then you can add on motion at a later stage, or it's quite a complex thing getting the motion right. And quite often, as a business like us, we have so many different customers and cars and circuits that they want to race.
Yeah.
It would be wrong of us to try and optimize our motion to fit every one of them. So we have to generalize a little bit. Where a Formula One team, they're only running one car, and obviously that car's been developed all the time, and they're running a number of similar tyre models, and they're probably only using a number of circuits because they want to use the consistency of a couple of circuits. So, at that point, that car should feel really realistic in terms of what it does.
Yeah.
The other end of the market, you need to get something that feels all right, does about the correct lap time. The driver puts in similar inputs, and then that's sort of as good as you're going to get for the car model. Because, again, it's down to time and money you can spend on the car model and return of that investment. If you've got one customer who's only using that car model and he's only doing 10 hours a year, then you're not going to get one of your engineers to spend 60 hours doing that car model to make it as good as it possibly can. You're going to get it close, use all the experience that you have, and then get it as close as possible, and then just a bit of fine tuning with that individual customer. But then there's other car models, like, for instance, an F4 car model. Well, we have lots of customers use that, so it's in our interest to keep developing it, using the drivers and the teams that come here to sort of fine tune it each time, and just keep getting it as good as we possibly can, really. So, it's like 100%. We can make our sims a lot better, but it means spending a lot of money to do that, to move it up. And at that point, it's like, well, I'm doing it for my own satisfaction rather than trying to keep the sim business viable and everyone in work, and customers keep coming back to things. So.
Yeah, and if you spend all this time and money developing one car, and then there's only one customer for that car, you're giving everyone else a poor ride because you've put all your money over there. Yeah,
exactly. And so we have to try and make it so we're a facility that works really well for all our customers. 100%. We're trying to give them the best we possibly can, but obviously with the time and dedication that means that we can look after all these people at once, really.
What's the software you're using nowadays?
So we've changed over the years and we've moved around for various reasons, but right now we're using the Assetto Corsa Pro. So you need software that you can get access to do the circuits and the car modeling and the time models. There's other, for instance, iRacing, they've got some good circuits on there, but everything's locked down. So you don't have the opportunity to sort of do your own modifications and changes to the circuits, because circuits change. If iRacing as a platform for eSports is fantastic, but for our type of business, it doesn't give us the access or the flexibility. So Assetto Corsa Pro right now works really well for what we're doing here in terms of the rental side of the business, and the sims that we sell. Means they can have whatever we've developed, they can have at their home as well. So it works well, but it's a moving goalpost. We've changed software 3 times in 10 years, and every time you change, you've got to build up your circuit library again and build up your car models again, and it takes time. So you don't want to do it too often, but we will change when we think the product, there's another product out there that will give our customers a better sort of opportunity and increase the immersion of what we were able to provide. So it's sort of a moving goalpost really. But right now, I'm very happy with Assetto Corsa. It works for, nearly all our customers.
And how does Pro differ from the conventional standard one you can buy?
I think it's more the access that it gives us, and also best way of describing it in terms of what is the best way of describing it? Access would be the main one, and there's another dimension that they often talk about, the engineers, and I'll probably remember the word in a minute. But we come back to that. Come back to that one. But it's basically giving us the chance to sort of do all our own modelling and tyres and everything.
You can adjust parameters outside of suspension setup and the normal stuff that you want to change. You're like, I want to change how grippy that tyre is, or what? Yeah.
And you can do quite a lot of that in the normal world, but this just gives us ultimate control of what we're trying to do, really. So it's good. But we started, when the company started, it was on R Factor, and we've moved to Panthera at certain stages, and you just got to find what works well. And even now, there's times when you can look at other software, and it's like R Factor do a great Le Mans. We raced the eSport this year, and it was fantastic. So as long as you've got the commercial license for all of them, you can sort of copy and paste a little bit with what you're doing. Really.
Yeah, and presumably certain bits of software, every now and then someone will come out and they've got a track that you don't have on any others, or a car or something, and you're like, this person wants this, so we've got to do.
Yeah, quite often it's people that bought our sims that will suddenly go, have you got this circuit? And it's like, actually, I've never heard of it. And then we do a bit of work. It's like, we don't have it, and you can't get it on the platform we're using, but this platform does have it. So you just need to download the software and use it. It might not be ideal, but it's still going to be really relevant for what you need to learn the circuit. So we can't do every circuit in the world, because that would just
don't exist as well.
It's unlikely we're going to have a customer here that wants a circuit in the I don't know, Willow Springs in California or something like that. It's unlikely, so we don't need to cover that basis. Yeah,
totally. The home sort of sim setup, I'm on that slight journey, just elevating slightly up, and I'm at the point now where I think I'm about to go and get some sort of cage type thing and mount some screens, and that's the next step for me. But it's pulling the trigger on and trying to work out where to pitch it.
Well, the budget will dictate that.
The budget, obviously. You're like, the difference of doing, let's say, a race weekend in a race car or buying yourself a sim, and you're like, okay,
Well, the way I look at it on the sim stuff now is there's so much decent equipment out there that's available that will give you a good level of sim without too much expenditure, but they last forever. That's the thing. If you buy a sim now and you spend, I don't know, let's say 12 or 16 or something like that, but it's going to last you 5 years minimum, and then you think about how much you get out of that sim, and how much it will help your preparation. It's a small fee to pay over that period. Okay, it's lumpy at the beginning, but that's one of the
sort of hours in, you get a lot out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I've sort of lived around sims now for over 20 years, and I don't have one at home, and I really want one at home. But I know if I had one at home, I'd be spending way too much time in it. Sort of thing. And I will get one at some stage, but it's the times I get to, we've got two big sims here. Yeah. We've got sims that are being built, and sometimes we have to jump on them and sort of do 1 hour on them before they go to the customer. And then we've got ones that we use for, okay, we've got a new part, let's put it on this one. It's our development hack thing. It's not pretty. It's basically, it's there to bolt bits on and try them out, see if they work and what relevance they have and if we can use them. And to use that, when people have gone home and just sort of have a cheeky hour on it, I love it. It's good fun. It's it's an enjoyable time to just drive for the sake of enjoyment, really.
I went to, I'm not going to name them, but I went to a sim place a while ago, probably 5 years ago, to do. I think I did like an introductory session, and they were going to optimize your life and everything or whatever. And my problem was I got in it, was aimed to drive the car that I was racing at the time, which was a Radical, and I got in the sim and it just didn't feel the same. Like I know it's not going to feel like racing a car. Like I've driven loads of racing games and stuff before, and with wheels, it's just, even just the wheel was way, way off to how it felt. And that meant it took me most of the time in the session, even to get close to being able to just drive the sim.
Yes, yeah.
Whereas you get on a good one, or one that's been calibrated well, and that journey is much shorter. And immediately I went away from that and was like, well, yeah. And I've tried a couple of other ones since, and I was like, well, I'd rather go home and do like 5,000 hours at home than 2 hours on something where you have to learn to drive the sim, and then you're like, I'm not actually sure I'm getting anything out of this. The main thing would be the coaching side of it.
Yeah,
100%. That is, that's, you can't just get that at home.
Yeah, I mean, like when we do a car model and that, we try to bring in experienced drivers of that car because, I could jump in it and I go, well, it goes around the racetrack and it goes up and down the gears and it brakes and it does everything that a car should do, but it probably doesn't have the character of the car. So we always try to bring in people that have regular experience of the car, because if they've got real data from the real world, so we can make sure that the performance is about right, but they know what the steering wheel feels like, and the weight of the steering wheel, and just the little characteristics of the car that we could never get from the data. Trying to reverse engineer it and build the car model that way. So by bringing in the people that know about the car, I think we do put the feel into it. But one of the things about sims is, because it's not real, and you're never going to get all those real experiences, you have to relearn, and also then just get used to the sim. And I'd say it's a minimum 10 laps before you should even think about, is this good or bad? It's got to be 10 laps where you just adapt to the fact there's no feel from movement, potentially, if it's not got motion, and just so your brain gets used to the visuals and everything else. Then after 10 laps, then you can start to sort of pick some holes in it if needs be, or okay, we need to change this and this sort of thing. So it is hard, and some people are more sensitive to the differences between virtual and reality, and that's just normal. But we have it with the ones that we sell, because obviously people buy them, they were going to go racing, they've got their car model, the real cars, and we build them the car model to sort of match what they're racing themselves. But we always bring in a pro to sort of base on it. And today one of our guys is off site, he's off with one of our customers because he's not convinced it's quite like his car. We're happy that we've done a good car model because we've had a real driver, but it may be, and he does sessions here. In reality, he does sessions here, so he uses the sim, that car model here with his driver coach. He's got a smaller sim at home with the same car model, but somewhere it's not working for him. So our guy's going down there today to try and, maybe there's a few little changes we need to do to the sim to give him that same experience. So it's just a bit of tweaking here and there, but it's quite normal for people to sort of go, that doesn't feel like my car. And it's like, okay, well, we need you just to adapt a little bit to a sim, because there's so much information you're not going to get in this environment that you will get subconsciously in the real environment. And that's the sort of the skill between jumping between two different things, especially for the people that are doing F1 sims, when they're doing the engineering work, there's a million things, bits of information they're not getting. And there's so many things that we don't even have names for, but it's all sensory, and it tells you what the balance of the car is. It tells you where the peak of the tyre is and the point of rotation on the axis and all that stuff, which drivers don't even think about, but it tells you where the limit is, and trying to replicate all of that in a room is nearly impossible.
Yeah, you always get people come back and they're like, oh, I spanned this car and I would never have spun that car in real life. You're like, it's just going to happen. You're not going to get all of the same feelings and inertia and whatever.
I mean, when a sim's good if you don't spin often. So once you've got through the sort of getting used to the sim, if you're spinning off every 2 or 3 laps, then yeah, you can sort of justifiably say it's not good, it isn't quite right. Unless you are a person that races in the real world and spin off every 2 or 3 laps as well. But then at that point you go, this is brilliant, this is absolutely spot on. But it's one of those things, I think this year I've not had a spin in the real world. Last year I had 1, and I think the year before that I had 0, and the year before that I had 2. So in real driving, spinning, once you get to a certain level, it doesn't it doesn't really happen. And then if you get to the sim world and you're going off, I don't know, 10 times a session or a day, then the sim needs to be improved. They need to be able to give you a bit more cueing to see where the balance of the car is.
Yeah, I remember when it was Project Cars. When Project Cars came out, I remember playing it at home and then just span like 100 million times in the first 10 minutes. And it almost got to the point where it was like, this is going in the bin because I just cannot drive it. And then they came out and they're like, oh no, we haven't calibrated it at all for anyone to use in real life. You're like, okay.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah. The telly nearly went through, or the monitor nearly went out the bin.
Yeah.
But it's like when I've been doing this, like obviously the lockdown now, there's so much sort of eSports going on, and I did the Legends Trophy and stuff.
How was that?
It's amazing, loved it. But it was the hours required to be competitive.
Yeah.
So there's some proper drivers in our little race that we were doing on Saturdays, and effectively you could test all week. And when you saw people's lap count, you're like, they have literally been testing all week, because they've got nothing else to do in the week. And I used to maybe get it running Friday night. I'd come in a bit earlier on Saturday, and I reckon before each of the races I had 4 or 5 hours of track time, which I thought was plenty.
Yeah.
And then you think, I reckon they're up to 25 hours of track time with the amount of laps they've done. And, there was a big difference in people's performance because of that. But it was still great fun. I loved it. And there was Indy in particular was when we did the 500. Just the most fun I've had in a sim environment. And it was really competitive. And at one moment you think you're a hero because you're sort of near the front, and then everyone toes past you, and then next thing you're in the wall. And it was just the banter on the Discord and everything else was really a good way to spend a Saturday. And it stopped. There was season 1, season 2, and then there was talk about doing some more, and it hasn't happened now. And what we've tried to do is a couple of sim nights with people that have got our sims at home. And no one knows the tracks. We sort of shout at 6 o'clock and say, right, 6 o'clock, this track's going live, and 7 o'clock, free practice, and then 8 o'clock, 10-minute qualifying, and then we do 2 races. And that's it, a bit of fun. And one will be reverse grid. And what generally happens, we do the 2 races, and then it's like, because everyone's on Discord and still talking, do you want to do another one? Yeah, all right, let's do another one. So, and it's great fun because no one's had to do 10 hours of practice to be halfway up the grid.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's starting off with the same, and for sure there's people that are really good at it and not. And occasionally the ones who are, I would say, lacking in experience in the eSports sort of stuff, I might tell them a few hours before what the circuit's going to be, just to give them a bit of a helping hand and get them up to speed to the thing. But yeah, it's been really nice just to sort of throw in those races every now and again. It would be good actually if I can try and get one later on this week as well, just to, while I'm in the UK, it'd be nice just to sort of crack on and have another race.
It's quite good fun, isn't it? Like messing around with mates and stuff.
It's really good fun. And the nice thing, what was happening was none of us could get through turn 1 without wiping out half the field. So effectively, whoever managed to get through turn 1 would become the safety car. So it's like, whoever it was, like, can you just slow down? Some of us are upside down or whatever. So pack everyone up. And then one of my engineers here would be like the sheriff and like, okay, you can go green, 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 and off we go again. Yeah. And if there was another massive shunt, it would be like, okay, well, it's race to the flag now. But at least it was really sporting and a bit of fun. And it was also like, you've got to have a beer beforehand. You're not allowed to drive your sim without
fair.
a beverage before, so it was good.
How much crossover do you think there is between real world on track driving and esports driving?
It's interesting. I think the people that are doing well in esports, they've got the skill sets to be able to do it. The fundamental skill sets of being able to go into race cars and do a good job. Because the high end of esports they're incredible. What their sort of dedication, the hours they spend practicing to get good at the game, and it's probably been more difficult for pro real drivers to come across to the esport world because there's certain techniques that literally don't work in the real world, and it's ingrained in you because that's what you've been doing for forever.
You would explode a car or whatever.
Sorry?
You'd blow up your engine or something.
Well,
whatever.
It's the little things about, the steering input and saturating the front tyre. In the real world, you never really do that because you sort of drive into the grip that you have available and you can feel it. Where it seems in certain platforms that the tyre model means you've got to get over the top of it. And sort of kill the performance a little bit.
So go over that bit where it starts to go almost like off,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you sort of, to make sure that the rear you don't spin off. You've got to saturate the front. And little techniques with the braking where you sort of keep a bit of pressure in. With throttle. So you're braking, and if you did that in the real car, one, your fuel consumption would be horrendous. The brake wear would be horrendous. And you probably lose it anyway. Where it seems normal to sort of trailing some throttle with the brake, and again helps to sort of stabilise the entry phase. So all these little things that are so abnormal to real driving, and they seem to be the basis of being really strong in esports. So that seems hard going the other direction. But once you start to master it, it's quite fun to sort of do it. You've just got to remember not to take it back to the real world. But we've seen already for a number of GT Academy was a good example with the guys that Lucas and Jan, a number of drivers that came out of that program who have easily demonstrated that you can use that platform to find really talented race drivers. Now, obviously, the norm would have been karting. That was the feed for bringing drivers up. Well, not everyone's got the access to spend that sort of money. Even to do it cheaply is 2,000 or 3,000 quid a year, if not 5,000 quid a year. And you're never gonna, if you're spending that money, it will be very unlikely you're gonna get to a point where you can make an impression that someone's gonna pick you up and take you on. Now, if esports, already there's people in esports making a good living. So they don't need to look across the real world.
It was going to be a follow-up question. At
what
point there doesn't need to be a cross?
No. There can be a cross if people want to go from the virtual to the reality and have that experience, and vice versa. If you can't get on the run in the real world because of it's expensive to get going. Then you've still got an opportunity to do it virtually and actually make a decent career. Okay, the career might not be as long, maybe, I don't know. I don't know how, it's still quite in its infancy at the moment. So maybe these guys will be around for 2 or 3 years and the next crop comes through. Maybe the turnover is quicker. I don't know. But there's still a good number of people making a fairly good wage out of esports. So maybe they don't need to cross, but they have, and it's been successful. Certainly it's been successful taking someone from the virtual world into real racing. I don't know if I've seen it go the other way yet, where yes, people have come across and they've been good, but I don't know if they've then become pro. I don't know if it's happened yet. So but it's great. And I just think it's a lovely way of maybe introducing more people to racing, whether it's real or not. It's just it's another access point for people to get involved.
Yeah, the more people playing whatever game, Gran Turismo Sport, and they might do like an endurance race, and they're like, oh, what's this endurance race? Oh, this is Le Mans. And then you start to discover, and you get to, the thing I love about sims and, you know, that sort of side of the gaming is I get to drive in some element all of these cars that otherwise I'm never going to get a chance to drive.
Yeah. And same for me. It's like when we've done some bits and we've driven some old Grand Prix cars around Goodwood. It's like, I'm never going to get to drive that car. In fact, I don't even know if that car still is around. It's probably in a museum somewhere, but it was fabulous to drive, sort of thing. And you're right. And that conversation came up a fair bit. I was in Atlanta at the weekend racing, and it came up quite a bit over the weekend where people get to enjoy racing cars that one they may even never have the chance to go to the circuit, let alone drive that particular car. And I think that's what's so great about esports, and the fact that the visuals are just so immersive now, and the cars are getting more and more representative to what they are in the real world. Is give it another 5 years. I can't even believe how far it's come in this 5 years. So let alone what the next 5 years is going to bring to the.
As it gets better, it's getting more popular. And as it gets more popular, they get more budget. And a video game is going to have way more budget than even like an F1 team to put into a sim.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine. Which is great, because they are so enjoyable. I mean, we did that Le Mans race, esport race, and I wasn't particularly competitive in that. I still loved it, and my first stint was midnight. So I've sort of been up all day, and I'm like getting a little bit like, I actually want to go to bed now, but I'm about to do my first stint. And then we were doing 3-hour stints at that stage. And I'm like, I'm not even sure I can do 3 hours of driving a sim.
Yeah.
It went so quick, and I loved it. And one of the best bits for me was on the Mulsanne straight, a Corvette was overtaking me. And the noise of it coming past was identical to what it is in reality. And it's the noise of their side exhaust coming up the door and into the car. And I was literally driving along, and I was like, oh my God, I just want to stay here for a bit longer. He's going past, but I wish he wasn't, because it's just brilliant. And one of my guys, the engineer, was sort of sat next to me anyway, and I'm, this is so good. It's brilliant. Back with the thing. It was just great. And it would be really good if that was a one-off, obviously, because there was no Le Mans in June.
Yeah.
It'd be great if they did that annually. Maybe it's a winter thing or something, because it was so much fun to do.
Yeah, they should totally do that. And it was cool. I watched a bit of it, and I'm sure it was wicked fun to do. So we've talked a lot about sim racing and Le Mans and stuff like that. Let's talk a little bit about real life out there on the track. So you've been to Le Mans quite a few times.
Yeah, it's I missed this year, but it's 17 up until now. So,
wow.
I never thought, even to go there once would have been like a great experience. So to have been there 17 times. I've been there 18 because I was there in 99 as the reserve driver for Mercedes. So that was a nice way to go there. So I got involved with the team. I saw how it all worked. It was an unfortunate weekend for Mercedes anyway, but in terms of an experience, I think for anyone, any driver, it would be worth going there as a part of the team, but not as a driver before, just so you can understand the magnitude of the event, to take in the atmosphere, and to operationally see how it runs. Because I think if you go there for the first time and you haven't had any experience of it, it's quite a lot going on. This year was probably a bit easier for the drivers because there was less things going on in terms of off-circuit commitments with the driver parade, the sponsorship things you have to do. There's none of that going on, so it was quite a basic race weekend. But when it's the full-blown Le Mans week, it's a full-on week. By the time you get to the race, you're pretty knackered already. I think it's a good experience to go before. And so 99 was really good in terms of just letting me understand what the race was about. And then 2003 and 4, I did it with the Ferrari 550 Pro Drive cars, which were epic cars to drive.
That is a sick car.
It's beautiful. I mean, it was really good to drive. And I got the chance to drive with Conor McRae in 2005. So that was just an amazing week. And that's when, after that race in 2004, the whole Aston Martin racing journey began, because the DBR9 was already in design, and we started testing towards the back end of 2004 with the GT1 DBR9. And then from 2005, it was sort of a full-on race program. And from that moment on, from 5 till last year, I've been back with Aston Martin every year at Le Mans, either driving GT1s, LMP, or GTE. It's been a good selection of cars to race.
How do those, it's like DBR9 is one of my favorite cars, it's a badass thing. Like, how do those sorts of cars compare? Like a GT1 car from back then, or sort of towards the end of the GT1 period, versus GTE now? Like, how are they different?
Yeah, they are. Fundamentally, they're quite different in terms of the GT1, especially the DBR9, is like my all-time favourite car to race. It's sequential shift. You had to heel and toe. It was a big engine, lots of power, reasonably good aero. Tyre technology wasn't too bad as well at the time. So it was a really nice car to drive, fun. You had to grab it by the scruff of the neck. You were busy behind the wheel, shifting, having to heel and toe every time. There's a lot for the drivers to do, and it was enjoyable because of that. And the Michelin tyres we were on were like really impressive in terms of their performance over a triple stint, etc. It was something that I wasn't really sure they were capable of doing. But the car, you started with a full tank of fuel, and the car just got quicker and quicker and quicker. You came in, refueled, car was still competitive, just a little bit slower than the first stint. And by the time you got to the third stint, they were still gripping the tyre, and so it was great fun to drive. And also, against a competitor like Corvette, it made for great racing. And then when GTE started with the wet program, different animal altogether. So aerodynamically, probably a little bit less performance, sequential sort of paddle shift. So you didn't really once you used the clutch to pull away, that was it. And then it was all on the paddles. Less power, but probably more mechanical grip from the car. So a different animal to drive. Where the GT1 was grab it by the scruff of the neck, the GTE was a bit more about finesse. Still enjoyable, but in a different way from what the GT1 cars were. But they're challenging. There's more going on. There's more you can adjust in terms of optimization as well. When you look inside a GTE now, and you compare that from what the GT1 car was, it's completely like the dash and everything else. The level of information and the adjustments you've got is insane. So the GT1, we had a simple dash. It was red LEDs. It told you when to change gear.
Yeah.
It told you what gear you're in. And then it had a couple of lights that told you if you had an oil issue or a temperature issue. And that was it. That was all controls. And I had two little blue LEDs on the dash that were fitted after, which told you if you had locked the front left or right tire. So very, very simple. Then you go into like the current GT car, you've got an amazing Cosworth dashboard, which you can have a million bits of information on. You've got your shift lights, you've got locking lights, you've got traction control lights on it. You've got everything you need to know in terms of parameters on the car, all on display. To the right of that, you've then got your rear view camera on there, which has got a radar on. So that's got arrows flicking up with, that car's 50 meters behind, or it's 20 meters behind. It's on you, don't turn in, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you've got all that information. And then to the next side of that, you've got another screen, which has got like the marshalling system, which is yellow flags, red flags, slow zones, everything that they want to give the drivers, which is really useful. And then further up on the dash is two sets of 8 lights, which give you various stages of lock-in and various stages of traction control. So that's all the information there, which can be a little bit overpowering at times. And then the steering wheel, the GT1, I think had probably 2 buttons, a radio and a pit lane speed limiter. And maybe there was 1 or 2 rotary switches to use, but that was it. And the current GTE one has got like 14 buttons, 5 rotary switches. It's so much going on. So it's a different animal to drive, because you're using, in the GTE, you're using the tools more, tuning them. Where, like I said, the GT1 is like, it's a bit rough and ready. Just grab hold of it and drag it around for 3 hours and do the best you can with it. But so much fun to drive.
Yeah, and all of those cars sound unbelievable.
The LMP, we had the LMP phase, which the first 9 and 10 was the Lola Aston Martin V12.
That was sick.
Beautiful car, sounded incredible, and completely different from a GT car to drive. And it was the diesel period, so we never had a chance of overall victory. But we were, fighting for petrol honours when we were out there. And a great cars to drive. To run in LMP at Le Mans, where you're not really having to think about your mirrors particularly, it's just cutting through the different classes. It's great to be in that position, really enjoyable. And I'd say the only downside of everything that's Aston Martin Racing's done has been 2011, when we had the AMR1, which was, pretty much a disaster at Le Mans, and soon after that got canned. So, for all the years of success and that, and 1 year where it wasn't particularly good, it just shows how strong the team's been over such a long period of time. Really.
Yeah, definitely. The whole scything through traffic, like right now, how did GTE, because GTE cars are they still, there was a point where they were faster than LMP2 cars on the straights? There
might have been a period a long time ago when the top speed of the LMP2s weren't particularly strong. Now it's a big difference. I'd say if you look at top speeds at Le Mans, the GTE cars are nearly nudging 200. I think the LMPs are sort of 225, and maybe it's 235, 240 for the LMP ones. So maybe not as high as that, but it's still 230 or something. So there's a nice speed differential between the cars. What you don't want is everyone with each class with a similar top speed, because then it means all the overtakes have to happen in the braking zones or the corner, and that leads to all sorts of problems. So when the cars are considerably quicker down the straight, it's easy for them to either decide, I'll wait until I got through the corner before overtaking, or for you to go, okay, we're probably going to be getting close to each other when we're in the braking zone. If I just ease off the throttle a fraction, he's going to get a clean line through the corner, and the overall hindrance is less. That sort of traffic management is one of the biggest skills to have at any multi-class type of racing, and particularly at Le Mans, is letting your ego go, do you know what, I'll just ease off here, because it's effectively going to be the least compromise over my lap time. And that's what you're generally fighting against. But quite often it's like you're in your zone, and it's like, no, I'm going to brake at my normal point, and then you end up with this cluster of chaos at the apex where you both are completely screwed, and you'll end up losing a second half, when if you just rolled off the throttle, gave that person the corner, you lose half a second. But it's quite a hard mindset to get into. And also when you're doing with the GT, when it's class to class or AM against pro, so you're not in the same race, but you sort of, you're making a move, and it's like, if you just came off your throttle, right, for half a second right now, you and me are going to have no issues when we get to the apex.
Yeah.
No, it's all this, like, two cars around the corner. It's, come on.
But if you had an AM driver that was sneaking up on you.
Sorry?
If you had an AM driver sneaking up on you, would you do that little lift and then just let them pass?
Well, no, it never happens, does it? An AM driver never coming up on you. It doesn't work like that. Thankfully, there's always a difference between the pro class and the AM in overall performance. So that scenario doesn't happen. There's been occasions when the classes have been really close on performance, and you might be on triple stint tyres and they're on new. Yeah. Then it becomes a bit more of an issue, because if you're behind them, it's really hard to overtake if they're not going to help. Yeah. And vice versa, they can be quite punchy to begin with. But yeah, you're not letting them through. There's no way on earth that's happening. So it does make for some funny situations out on track with the whole traffic management. But one of the big skills of dealing with it is you can see in your mirror, you can sort of work out quite quickly what car is coming. You'll build like a bit of understanding of all the cars out there. And you'll start to plan where you think that car's going to get to you. So you're already working out what the overtake might look like and what you might do to compromise yourself less. So it may be you roll out the throttle, or it could be you actually defend early. So the prototype knows, okay, he doesn't want me to dive by him. So I either stay behind for the corner or I've got to go the long way round, and there's a bigger risk.
Yeah.
But you put the ball back in their court, because what is really horrible is the moves when it's a full dive bomb. You know, you've already committed, you've already got the trajectory for the apex, and suddenly this LMP car's just sent it, and you've got to turn out. And it means if you turn out, you might be on the marbles and you might not get back in. And, you know, it happens a lot. And I've been guilty of it when I've been in the LMP car, where I've sent it probably a bit too late for the guy to sort of make an adjustment. And it's hard, it's hard for people in LMP to always judge that situation. Quite often you think, I'm gaining this quick, it must be, easy for me to get past before it gets to the apex, but it's not always the case. But, that's what makes it so exciting, that no lap will be the same. And there's always something going on, which makes it.
Yeah. Multi-class racing is so much more interesting. A lot more interesting than single class a lot of the time because of the fact that you're dealing with other cars all of the time, and there's all of these interactions that have to happen around the fact that you're still in a race with the other people.
Yeah, and that's it does really mix it up, and it does make it fun because of it, and it just keeps you on your toes. The other side is single make racing when it's really close. And there's no one dominant because the cars are just so even. It's like you go indoor karting. Now, okay, there's always a variance in the karts, but hopefully during the night you'll get swapped around. You don't have the same. There's going to be a donkey out there, and hopefully you only get it for one heat or something. But generally, you'll have a good kart back car. But most people can drive an indoor kart well because the car speeds are low. It's single line racetrack basically. So your average person with a bit of experience will do a good job, even compared to like a full pro person. And as you sort of move away and the cars get quicker and everything else, then there tends to be a bigger gap between a good driver and a really good driver, etc. But when you do like the single make stuff where it's slow, I think some of the racing in that is magical because it's like it's a fairly high speed game of chess. No one's going to get away. No one's going to break the pack. The cars are aerodynamically not brilliant, so the toe is great. And it just means there's really close racing all the time. And if you've got a load of drivers with decent respect that it's not about firing each other off, then it's brilliant. I love it. That sort of stuff is always good fun to go and do.
Yeah, occasionally, you get those grids, whether it's, I don't know, like GT3 Cup or probably something, or go way down like MX-5s.
Yeah.
And the top 15 cars or 20, the grid is separated by 1 second.
Yeah. And that's magic. One of the other engineers here, he races MX-5. And the videos he shows me on Monday after he comes back, I think they're just brilliant. It's just like he's having the best fun ever in something that costs $5,000. Yeah. And the racing's close, and sometimes he's on an up, sometimes he's on a down in terms of a result. But it always looks like it's been competitive, compact racing, which is, you go indoor karting, it's so much fun. It doesn't matter how much race experience you've got. I don't think you'll find any pro driver that wouldn't go indoor karting and say it's just the most basic fun in terms of it's real fun, real racing, real fun, and it's really enjoyable.
Yeah, because the more expensive it gets, there's just all these other factors that come into it because of the fact it's expensive.
Yeah, exactly. And you can get bigger gaps between people who've got a reasonable budget and a big budget, and then go testing and all that stuff. So yeah, there's the MX5 Championship, there's that Fun Cup, and Citroen C1.
I've done some of the C1 stuff.
Have you done it?
It's wicked. I've done Spa 24 hour twice and Silverstone once, and it's the most fun. It's just so much fun.
Yeah, and it looks it. And there's so many drivers I speak to that we should do that one day.
Yeah,
and it's on the list. There's still a few racetracks I want to go and race at, but in terms of a career point, I feel pretty much like I've done a lot of things and I've had a chance to drive lots of cool cars. But now it's like, I really want to go and do the Fun Cup. I really want to go and do the C1.
Yeah.
I probably want to go and do an MX5 race as well, because it just looks, it goes back to the core of what our sport's about, which is just the pure enjoyment of racing a car and enjoyment. And it doesn't have to be expensive to be able to go and do that.
100%. 100%. One of the things I wanted to ask, winning Le Mans versus winning ELMS, or like the WEC Championship, does one sit higher than the other, or is Le Mans just like such a beast that?
Well, I think it's always nice to win a championship. So winning the European Championship, it was great. I've not won that many championships over the years, so that was a bit of a highlight for me. A win at Le Mans is just a full-on career highlight. So. The 2007 race, there was huge pressure at that one to get the first win for Aston Martin. And then 8 felt no pressure. So we went there as like the current champions, and it was, just nice to be able to sort of back-to-back it before the end of the GT1 program with Aston Martin. And then in 2017 with the GTE car, it was the last year without the current Vantage at the time. And it won all the other races in World Endurance Championship, but it hadn't won Le Mans. So to finally get, the final piece of the jigsaw for that car was lovely. The top step at Le Mans, there is no other podium, I don't think, like it, as I've never been on a Grand Prix podium and never will. From all the podiums I've been on, that is the most special, like incredible to be up there, and very humbling experience as well. So I would say the championship is built up of a number of factors and performances and results over a year, and you win it and it's like, yes, that's a good feeling. But the Battle of Le Mans and the instant satisfaction of being on the top step of the podium, I think it's always the wins that will outweigh a championship as a single point of enjoyment. And that whole thing of being on the podium at Le Mans, even if you're second or third, is amazing. And then obviously the top step just really sort of is a special moment. And obviously they didn't have that experience this year because no crowds there, but all the years I've been there, the pit lane is just full. The racetrack to the side of the pit lane is full of people. The Aston Martin flags are flying. You can see your team, they're in the front rows of the big crowd. And everyone's fairly emotional anyway after a 24-hour race. Yeah. So, it's just a wonderful celebration that stays with you forever.
Yeah, that must be such an amazing thing. Why is it such a different beast, 24 hours versus 12?
The obvious extra length of time makes it harder. I think that going through the night and the things that go on at night that are, the emotions of what goes on during the night as well. And, definitely 24-hour racing, a good number of years ago was more about looking after the car to make it last 24 hours. Now the cars are running like sprint cars and are able to be pushed that hard all the way through. So it's a different type of racing. I can remember like interviews with Sterling Moss and how he didn't actually really like Le Mans. Yeah. And then we got one of the people that was involved with Aston Martin during that period came along and gave our team a bit of a chat about their experience. And it was only after his sort of story of how they went racing, where, you know, that year in 1959 when Aston Martin won, Sterling Moss and his teammate were basically told to just drive their car flat out to knowing that it would break.
Yeah.
And the other two cars were set with predetermined times that they were to stick to.
Okay.
Knowing that the car would only survive at that pace. So I can understand, like, Sir Sterling's frustration, because if he had to drive to a pace that would be fairly
slow or whatever.
Yeah, not so exciting. But now it's the opposite. It is like, as the practice sessions goes on, you're told from, you know, first lap, hit everything you're going to hit in the race. You know, every curve that you want to take it, because we need to understand that if there's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
By the time we do the race, you're either going to be told not to hit that curve or not to hit that one, or got to use this part of the track. But then you drive it as fast as you possibly can. And that's, you know, looking at our race in 17, it was flag, sprint. And this year, the same with the Aston Martin of 97 and the Ferrari. It was just an all-out sprint the whole way through the race. And it just makes it a little bit more rewarding when it's been a proper fight. You know, there's times I've had races where not even you haven't had success, but the fight has been so enjoyable. And there's other times when you've been on the top step, but it's like there was no. We were gifted that win.
Yeah.
And okay, it's nice to have the win, but the trophy doesn't really. There's no meaning to it, because it was
sort of
it was one
it
of
as
those
much or
gifted races. So yeah.
When you're doing like a long stint or extended bit of racing, do you get into this sort of like flow state where you're almost like
not Zen-like
a little bit?
No, definitely not Zen-like. It becomes really dot to dot. That's how I would. I don't know if every driver's like that, but it's, you know, you build a rhythm for the circuit, and you'll know that's where a brake, that's where a turn in, and you're always making fine adjustments for tyre wear and fuel load, etc. But you're trying to keep that consistency, and you've got to, you know what your lap time is, and you're trying to keep as close to that as you possibly can, with the inconsistency of traffic. And you have to be honest, sometimes you do a crap lap and it's like, okay, I've lost 3/10 there because I just got my braking wrong for whatever, corner Tech Rouge or something. But you're trying to keep that consistency, because after the race, we get so much information given back to us about our performances as drivers, but as the team, as what the car's been like compared to the competitors. And the matrix for your performance is not necessarily who got the fastest lap, but who did the most consistent fast laps, and what was your average, basically. There's always the hero lap, but you're wanting to make sure you're in the top average all the time, because then you've done a good job. And if you can do that every time you get in a car, then you've contributed really well to what the result is. There'll be other guys that would, I haven't really seen it in the current crop with Aston Martin, but there'll be other guys that you go up against, and their thing is, I just want to be a hero and get that fastest lap. And it's like, well, that's not really the objective. It's like, to win, it's like, who's going to do the fastest stint the whole way through the race, and that's going to give us as a team the performance. So I think quite often guys that come across from single seaters or whatever, where it's one driver, one car type racing, it just takes a bit of time to adapt to the bigger picture. Some people get it straight away. Some people do get it eventually, and there's others who never get it, and generally they're the ones who don't have a long career in sports car racing. Yeah.
It's an interesting concept that, like, I've had it on. When you look at, let's say, the 24-hour C1 stuff, it's a completely different end of the spectrum. But if you look at the average lap time, including a normal length of pit stop for the race, it's not that fast. Obviously, you have to maintain that for 24 hours, but essentially, like, one bad lap knocks away 10 fast laps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it is like that. It is like a spin. Suddenly, if you spin, let's say it's 10 seconds, and you're doing 40 laps, it's going to take you that whole stint just to make it up, maybe. Well, you won't make it up. You're still going to be 10 seconds down on what you could have done. But it's the same with pit stops. The guys, they practice so much, knowing that half a second each stop is suddenly during a race. That's 12 and a half seconds you've just given away. So from that point of view, it's the accumulation of time that you're always trying to minimize, whether it's mistakes, pit stops, fueling, all of those things in a 24-hour race. They're so critical to the overall big picture.
Yeah, because at this end of the spectrum, you're racing for like tenths a lap.
It is tenths of a lap because all the cars are now boxed to such a close sort of proximity to each other now, which is great. The drivers are all great professional racing drivers, really on the top of their game, and they are fighting. When you think it's a 3-minute 50 lap round Le Mans in the GTE, and they're scrapping over a tenth or 2/10 of a lap. But that's the thing, 3/10 round there, it's generally 14 laps in a stint. So suddenly you're giving away 4.5 seconds an hour if you're 3/10 off the pace, or you've lost 3/10 somewhere. And it adds up. You can see that's where the gaps start to fall, because it is only a tenth. And 3/10 is a blink of an eye. But 14 laps, it's suddenly 4.5 seconds. So,
and then you get to the end of the race, and these cars are like nose to tail after 24 hours. You're like, how has this happened?
It's weird. And it does happen at Le Mans, and it happens quite often. But the American racing, it always happens, just because of the way their regulations are and the way they do the full course yellows and all of that safety car period. It promotes end of race combat, which is really good fun. You do Daytona 500. It's like, you're racing for 20 hours, but the real stuff kicks off with 4 hours to go. Because even there's people there that can be 5 laps down after 2 hours, but every safety car you gain a lap, you can get yourself back. And I like that because it just keeps the racing tight all the way through. And some people say, well, it's a bit fake, isn't it? And it's like, well, not really. It's just making sure we're all go racing. That's it. It's horrible when someone has an issue so early in a race. You nearly go, well, if it was not WEC or something, but you could say, well, you're 5 laps down, you're never going to get that back.
Yeah.
So why do another 22 hours of racing? Because that's just a load of waste of money. Where if you've got a chance to get back, then you're going to keep going. Most people, though, do keep going. I don't know why. They can be 10 or 20 laps down, and it's like, we're still going to go to the flag. I guess to get the finish. Yeah,
to get the finish, and you've sunk, all this money's gone anyway. You might as well.
Yeah, there's still a bit of a saving by not going around, fuel and tyres and all that sort of stuff. So engine mileage and bits and bobs. But the good thing is, like with the American stuff, is like you've got a chance all the way to the end, and it keeps the cars on the track, which makes it more exciting.
Yeah, definitely. So at some point in time, you started doing some development driving on the road cars.
Yeah, I mean that's relatively new. I guess 4 or 5 years. First real program was the Vulcan track day car, but now I'm doing more with Rogo and Vantages and DB11s, DBSs, and a little bit with the DBX. Generally, the bit I'm doing is finding what the car performs like right on the limit, specifically for sort of a bit of circuit knowledge. Really, Aston Martin have got an amazing sort of team under Matt Becker for the vehicle dynamics. A load of really, really good drivers in the engineering department with all the experience of what is needed to make a good road car, because that's what they've been doing. That's their skill set. But occasionally they just want to make sure that what's the car like right at the limit on a track, and that's my little role with Aston Martin. The Vulcan, I had more of an involvement because it was more of a circuit beast anyway. Just to make sure we had a car that was really user friendly, gave the owners the sort of confidence to sort of push that type of car. So that was a really enjoyable program to be involved with from the word go. And also the Valkyrie. Now, that's a road car. It's getting lots of the expertise with the road car development drivers. Chris Goodwin is the main development driver on that. And so I've had and involvement at various stages. I've got another 2 days with the car this week, and I think I'm in the car for 5 days next week. So, but again, it's more the track performance that I get involved with. And as time goes on and I'm like less involved with like racing of cars, I'll get more involvement with the road car development. And it's really interesting because a race car, it's fairly basic what it has to do. It's got to be able to pull away. It's got to be able to do 60k down the pit lane. And then once it leaves the pit lane, it's got to go as fast as it possibly can for as long as it can without breaking down.
Yeah.
They're pretty basic sort of requirements. And then you get a road car, which this is the bit that's really been an education for me, is they have to do everything. They have to be able to start at -20. They've got to hit emissions. They've got to be able to drive down a high street in, I don't know, 110 degrees and stop, start. They've got to be able to do a load of burnouts in case the owner wants to be doing that. It's got to be able to reverse up a hill because the person who owns the car might live on a big estate with the garage up the top of it. It's a million things that a race car never has to do, and all of it's got to be tried and tested and optimized. And that's the bit that's been really interesting for me, to see the amount of work that goes into an Vantage, a DB11, a DBS, a DBX, and the Valkyrie. The Valkyrie has still got to achieve everything that the Vantage has got to be able to achieve, and then it's got to be able to go on a racetrack and be able to do the performance and hit the targets that have been set for that car. And so it's an incredible piece of engineering, and it's exciting for me to be involved. I've loved it. You still walk into the garage, having now seen the car for a couple of years, still walk into the garage and it still blows you away with the how it looks, but then the detail. When you get up close, it's the detail. And we had an event November last year where the owners were able to come and see the car perform. And I was talking to one of the owners, and quite a few of them have got big car collections. And I said, well, with this car, if I owned this car, if I was going to be lucky enough to own this car, my garage would have a glass floor, so I can go under it and look up at it. Because I said the what's underneath, because I've seen one of the cars on the ramps, is incredible. The aerodynamics under that car and the fact that everything's packaged in such a way, you will look at it from the top and admire the design and be in awe of it, but you will equally be underneath it going, this is just incredible, and not many people are going to get to do that. So that'd be I'd order a Valkyrie and a garage with a glass door floor, just so I could appreciate the top and the bottom.
Or at the very least, a mirrored floor.
Well, I don't think the mirror floor would give it the right sort of.
You wouldn't get enough.
You need to be able to view it all in one go. But
yeah. Have one suspended from the ceiling.
Yeah.
Has it been so? Those two cars, Valkyrie and Vulcan, presumably they are very different beasts in terms of
to each other,
and like. I guess they're angled at consumers to be driven, rather like sort of ish Joe Public has got to be able to drive them, not just professional racing drivers.
Yeah, definitely the Vulcan was designed as a amazing track day car, but it had to be there's no point giving a non-professional race driver who doesn't go racing, someone who doesn't go racing but enjoys going track days and stuff like that. There's no point giving them a GT3 car which is been optimized and is on the limit. They're going to drop the car. That's one of those things. So the Vulcan had to be something that was amazing visually. Inside the car is just incredible. It's not like a race car inside. It's more like a spaceship inside. But it needed to give the drivers confidence, to be able to extract the performance that car has got. So it was very clear from the word go under David King what the target is, and Fraser, the sort of project manager of that car, very clear what we were trying to achieve with it. And it's an easy car to get hold of. It's an easy car to drive and get close to the limit. it's enjoyable. That's the thing. And the V12, just amazing sound. You've got the best soundtrack you could possibly get. And then obviously that only had one job, to do that on a racetrack. So it didn't have all the other stuff that road cars have to do, which the Valkyrie does have to achieve. But I'd say that they are different animals purely because of the fact that the Valkyrie has to be a grown-up road car as well. And there's definitely things within the Valkyrie that are required to be a road car that would, and it's not a compromise of design, because the design was to be a road car. That is, so it's fitting the box it had to fit in, but that means it is different from what the Vulcan's sort of design project had to be.
Yeah. Are you a little bit sad that we're not going to see a Valkyrie GTR at Le Mans? Right, I guess, but unlikely. Yeah,
I mean, it would have been wonderful to see that come to light, and to see Valkyries racing on a race circuit. And maybe there's an option in the future. I think it's really difficult at the moment for the organisers to get the right regulations. It looks like LMDH is coming across, which I think is perfect. If you look at the success of GT3 racing around the world, and how many manufacturers have been able to get involved in sports car racing because of that class. I think LMDH will be the same. It'll be a global platform that can be used in America, Europe, world, Asia, whatever. There'll be this platform that enables more manufacturers to get involved and to have cars that are capable of winning Le Mans outright. Now, there's still quite a few companies that are keen on the hypercar class. So if they can get the balance between the two classes to be as even as possible, then hopefully there's still those guys that want to go out there, manufacturers that want to go out there and bring on their hypercars and demonstrate them as well, and have a chance of obviously outright wins as well. But it's always hard when there's two classes that are capable of overall success, because if one's winning, the other class is like, oh, hang on, the mechanism for the balance is not quite right, and it's going to go like that. And so it's a difficult situation to be in. But I do believe LMDH is a good package for sports car racing on the whole. Yeah,
and for me, I love seeing cars that have a road element. I love prototypes as well and that sort of thing. And we've got a little bit of experience driving prototype type stuff, and it's fun. But for most people, they want to be able to see whether it's your Vantage or whatever, and then a GTE race car. And if we have these crazy hypercars, if they are also then the fastest race cars, that's just quite cool. It's a great thing for the brand overall, I think.
Yeah, I do think that's one of the things that LMDH has sort of answered, is the fact that the manufacturers can stamp their own signature on the cars. You look at the Mazda and the Acura and the Cadillac out in America, they all look really different, and they've got the look of the manufacturer about them. Yeah. It would be lovely to have all the manufacturers all producing hypercars that they could go and race. But again, they've got to do some sort of balance of performance. Yeah. If it's anything that comes from a road car product, you have to have balance of performance. Anything that is a clean sheet race car is set of regulations, and that should be it. And it's then down to the teams and the designers to get it right. And balance of performance gets a really hard knock, but I can't see how our sport can be anything other than using balance of performance. And the organisers are getting better and better at getting it right. And it's a necessity of multi-manufacturer racing. Otherwise, you'd have a one-make class, especially when it's customer-based, because effectively one of those road cars would naturally be a better race car. And then if that was the case, then everyone would buy the one that was going to be the one that had the best chance to win, sort of thing. So by having this mechanism in place, every manufacturer can produce a car that will have a chance of winning, which is great. More manufacturers, more racing, more drivers, more events. It's just win-win all the way around for one little compromise, which is this horrible word, balance of performance.
Which everyone hates. I think.
Everyone hates when it's not your favour. When it's not your favourite, everyone hates it. But it ebbs and flows. Some days it's like, we were amazing. No, at that point, they no one go, but we did have the best spot out there, sort of thing. It's like people only moan about it when it's not your day, really.
Yeah, totally. No, it's very cool. Well, I normally wrap these up with 5 questions.
Great.
So I'll hate you with them. Do you have a most memorable driving trip or journey? And in your case, you can do a race if you want.
I mean, there's lots and lots of races, and it would be easy to pick out the Le Mans wins. But one of the ones that really stood out was a race in Brazil, World Endurance Championship. I think it was 2012. My teammate at the time was Stefan Booker, and we had a 6-hour race against Ferrari. And we were fighting for tenths. Every pit stop is either our team got us ahead or they got us ahead. And then on track, we basically, at no point were we more than a second apart. And it was an amazingly intensive race. And on that occasion, we didn't win. But like I was saying earlier, it's not always the winning, it's the fight, the enjoyment of the fight. And it was just an epic battle. And I'd say that was probably in the sports car stuff, that was the most enjoyable, not result, but just driving experience.
Sort of journey, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay. 5-car garage, unlimited value.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've always thought if I won the lottery, I'd spend 23 million on 23 cars. But, one would be 100. 23 is my lucky number. That's the only reason. Yeah. So I would have in my garage, I'd have a 177.
Oh, yes. I like that.
A black F40, a Mercedes, I should say a 300 SL, but I actually prefer the little 190 SL. Mm-hmm. So I'm up to 3. I'd have a Porsche 356A.
Nice. And have you got a daily, or is one of these your daily already?
None of these are dailies. These are all like, Sundays.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They're the Sunday cars. I wouldn't put a daily in, but if I've only got 5 cars, I'm having. Finally, I'd probably I think I'd go for a DB4 GT.
Nice.
I've got limitless money.
Yeah, unlimited.
Okay, DB4 Segato then.
Yeah, it looks a bit nicer.
Yeah, so I'll go for that. There, that'd be it.
Bunch.
They're generally older. I like the older cars. I'm surrounded every day with new stuff. I really enjoy driving out like with the Goodwood and stuff. So I enjoy that sort of stuff.
Yeah. No, cool. Right. If you can only drive one car for the rest of your life, you're allowed a £500 banger on the side. If you've got family.
Oh, right. One car, it'd be the DB4 Segato. Yeah. I love the styling of it, and having driven a couple of not a Segato, but DB4s. Yeah, I just think they're compared to a modern car, they're not brilliant. But in terms of just pure enjoyment of driving along, I think they'd be amazing.
Yeah, totally. I got to drive the GTO Engineering 250 short wheelbase revival, essentially a tool room copy the other day. That was like a competition spec car on the road, and just for like half an hour. And it was utterly awful in all the ways that you would measure like modern cars, but it was just an unbelievable experience. Just everything about it was just kind of hilarious, and the noise and the gear shift and all of the stuff.
Beautiful looking car,
and looks amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get, and it's weird, isn't it? Because you could have these things where you could go, if I tick all of these boxes of metrics of like what should make it good, doesn't necessarily mean it's the best driving experience.
100%. Ultimately, I think modern day cars are getting too perfect.
Yeah.
So they lose the character of what driving was about. And maybe perfect is great for 90% of the people that are owning cars for one job, to go A to B.
Transit.
Yeah, and perfect's great. But for people that actually enjoy the driving element, then I think not perfect is actually perfect.
Totally. Yeah. Okay, most undervalued car at the moment?
Need to swap up on my road cars. What have I driven recently?
This is often the case with racing drivers. I don't know anything about road cars.
Yeah. Well, I know about Aston road cars, but they're not undervalued. What would be What hire cars have I had recently? Ooh. I'll tell you what, any American hire car isn't great. I don't know. It's like I struggle to stay in the lines on the motorways or the freeways out there. Yeah. I don't know. They're like more like sailing than. I came off the flight this morning or yesterday, and I'm like, yeah, I can easily keep within the lines in the UK. Why can I not do that in America? They just sort of wonderful. So it wouldn't be any American spec car.
Undervalued, so like underappreciated in price. Like underappreciated in price. It's tricky.
It is tricky. I don't know. No, I'm going to have to miss that one. I can't give you I cannot give you a decent answer.
Okay, I'll give you an interim question. When are customers going to get their Valkyries?
Can't answer that one either. That's where's that? I can't. Yeah, I'm not in charge of that bit. You need to go and speak to a grown-up.
Don't know. Fair enough. Okay, the final question. What is the most interesting car to you at the moment?
I'd say currently right now is one of the little projects we're doing with Advantage. So it's for the next iteration, and it's really nice because I'm getting to go the Neuschleife, and we're trying lots of different things with the current spec to make sure it's obviously an evolution of the current one. And it's really like, this is more me getting more experience under Matt Becker and his team to sort of really try and find the areas of the current car that are capable of being improved. And it's, for me, I'm really enjoying that experience, just because nothing's perfect. Because as soon as you finish one thing, it's like, okay, we're on to the next. But you can go back and make some improvement. Time always gives you that chance to make improvement. So I'd say that's that one.
Oh, cool. Well, there we go. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, no problem at all. That was easy.
It's been a good one. That was 1 hour 56 minutes.
Nice. Well, that's good, because in 3 minutes I've got another Zoom call.
Oh, okay. Well, I will leave you to it.
Because I was sort of looking up, going, all right, yeah, well, I should be all right. Oh, mate. Cool. Brilliant.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thanks. All right, take care. Cheers. Bye.